We have some new technology here. We have some new streaming technology here. And so we thought we would do a little dry run this evening and do a little segment on the shocking upset in the state of Alaska. Obviously, you had a major upset there. Sarah Palin losing that special election to Mary Peltola. So she will represent Alaska's at-large district. There's only one congressional district in Alaska because there are almost no people living there. And so Mary Peltola will represent that district through the end of this term. Sarah Palin is back on the ballot in November. And so it remains to be seen whether or not the Democrats will hold that seat. But for now, the Alaska voters sent Sarah Palin a message loud and clear, which is,
go home and get your fucking shine box.
Damn right.
The state uses ranked choice voting. And in this particular race, there were two Republicans in the race, Nicholas Begich and Sarah Palin. Begich was the sort of centrist GOPer, and Sarah Palin represents the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. Because there were two Republicans in the race, the Republicans split the vote on the first round. Because there was only one Democrat on the ballot, Mary Peltola, the Democrat, got 40% on the first round. And that proved to be very, very important. And so we're going to share an image here, share a little graphic that shows exactly how this voting broke down. So if you look here, and if that those numbers are a little bit small, like I said, this is our dry run, so we'll have perhaps better sized images on Sunday. But on the first round of voting, Mary Peltola, Democrat, 75,000 votes, 40% of the vote. Palin and Begich combined for about 60.5% of the vote. Palin got 31.28 and Begich 28.52. So that means because of ranked choice voting, the way ranked choice voting works, the last place candidate in the first round has their votes distributed according to the second choice on Nick Begich's ballot. So everybody who voted for Nick Begich first, whoever they voted second, then goes to the two remaining candidates here. On the second round, as you can see here, 27,000 of Nick Begich's 53,000 votes went to Sarah Palin. So that's about 50%. However, 15,000 of Begich's 53,000 votes went to the Democrat, a fairly strong showing for a Democrat on the second line of a Republican ballot. And so Mary Peltola got an additional 15,000 votes off of Begich's second round, and that put her over the top at 51.47 to Sarah Palin's 48.53. So we can call this a big win for Democrats. And look, a win is a win, of course. This was a shocking upset. Sarah Palin's obviously a huge name. Everybody figured that she would win this race. But the fact of the matter is, on the first round, the Democrats lost 60-40, which is worse than they lost in the 2020 race to Trump. So actually, Peltola underperformed Joe Biden because Joe Biden lost the race to Trump 43-53. In this race, the Republicans on the first round of voting did win 60-40. In November, there aren't going to be two Republicans splitting that vote in the first round. It's going to be Palin versus Peltola. Now, does Peltola still have a shot to keep the seat? Sure she does, because she is the incumbent now. Palin is now branded as a loser. And Peltola got 30% of Begich's vote, which is very, very good for a Democrat. So it's possible the Democrats do hold this seat, but it's not the massive win that people are making it out to be, because the fact of the matter is the Democrats did get their clocks cleaned on the first round of voting. And come November, it's very, very likely that someone is going to cross 50% on the first round of voting. And my money is still on Sarah Palin to cross 50% on the first round in November when she's not sharing a ballot line with a fellow GOPer. So that's my take on this. Again, I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer. I know this is a loyal Democrat audience. They're used to us doing a rah-rah, go blue team, go kind of show. I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news. You guys know how much I love Democrats, but I just wanted to give a little reality check there.
Yeah, we couldn't find anything that sounded like Pod Save America. That wouldn't just be Pod Save America, so we had to go with Due Dissidence. But that's really what we modeled ourselves on.
Exactly.
We want to be like those guys. We check it. We watch a lot of Joy Reid for notes, for pointers, and of course, we both have a shrine to the Maddow that we nightly burn incense on. So it's got a big picture of Rachel with that like sad Rachel eyes, you know, where her eyes crinkle up in the corners. I've got that picture like with a Buddha under it with incense and flowers. So what's interesting to me about this race is it's very Alaska in that it's kind of a Jerry Springer show. So you have Palin's in-laws were fundraising for Begich, actually. Her, you know, she's divorced now from Todd.
Right. From Todd.
So they were fundraising for her opponent. And then you had the longtime senator from Alaska, Mark Begich, was actually raising money for Peltola.
Right, because Mark Begich is a Democrat.
Yeah. So this was like a Jerry Springer episode up there in Alaska.
Yeah, a lot of drama
with this, a lot of family drama, a lot of backstabbing.
A lot of gossip, a lot of beef. I'm surprised the Vanguard didn't cover this. It's right up their alley. Lots of beef in this race.
Why are you coddling Sarah Palin?
Right.
Exactly. You're probably right, but I think you cannot underestimate the power of this road decision to swing some of these elections in surprising ways. This is a rare case where it is the Republicans who are snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Not that they really did anything in the immediate moment to cause it, but what they've done for the last several decades just came back to bite them in the ass this fucking year. Like any Republican with half a brain had to know that if the Supreme Court ever actually gives them what they say they want, this was going to be a very big problem for them. And now that problem has arrived.
Well, look, I mean, they had a good run. They had a good run throwing red meat to the Christian right, which is something that they had to do according to their business model, right? I mean, that's how they won all these elections these last 20 years. And eventually it comes time to pay the piper, right? I mean, if you're going to raw dog it with porn stars for 20 years, you're going to have a pretty good time, but you're going to end up sick, right?
Yeah.
It's going to get you in the end.
It's going to get bumpy down there.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And that's the Republicans, man. That's what they did with this Christian right, you know?
That's an excellent metaphor. That's the kind of metaphor they would ban from a school library.
It is a good metaphor. It's an ironic metaphor, given the fact that we're talking about the
graphic novel, so they can ban it. Because really they were on track to win a culture war argument for the first time in decades. They've been getting their asses handed to them on the culture war for 30 years. And it was just about to pivot back in their direction. And finally, that Supreme Court came through. They just happened to pick this year. And now, CRT, all of that, all these things that they're worried about.
A trans with a Schmendrick swinging it in a girl's bathroom.
It's not as much of a big deal when you're talking to people about not being able to get an abortion, right? I mean, it's not something Sarah Palin cares about. I'll give her this. She practices what she preaches. She's got like a fucking, she's got like a brood over there. She's like a puppy mother. What does she have? Like 8, 9, 10, 12? How many kids does she have?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
So she has the courage of her convictions. I'll give her that. But hey, man, most people do not want that right taken away from them, even Republicans. And I think it's more Republicans who support abortion than show up in polls. I think you have a lot of closet pro-choice Republicans.
Oh, you must. You would not have had that result in Kansas if you didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
There's no denying that. Look, no, I think that's absolutely true, and I think it's absolutely going to bite Republicans in places that you might not expect. I don't know if I would put Alaska in that column, as evidenced by the fact that on the first round of voting, which is the only round that's likely to matter in November, Democrats got beat 60-40, which is worse than Biden got beat in the state. And so there are still a lot of macro dynamics working against Democrats this year. And I think that, I mean, if I had to bet, I would still bet that the Republicans hold this seat in November. But there is another element that I want to talk about.
Palin has problems too, though. Palin has problems. She walked. No, I mean even.
No, I know what you mean.
I mean even for her voters.
I know what you mean.
Because she quit office to go be a movie star.
To be a reality TV star. Exactly.
Yeah, to go be on Fox and to be a commentator. She basically once she used Alaska as a stepping stone, then told them to go get their fucking shine box. I won't use it again. You already used it in the show. But
right.
but basically. She abandoned the state. She was the girl from the small town who once she got a little leg up, all right, see ya, Hicks, bye. I'm going Hollywood. So if it were another Republican candidate, I'd say they probably have a better chance. Like the fact that it's Palin and the fact that Roe is on the ballot everywhere. Roe is on the ballot.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I mentioned there was another angle that I want to discuss this from, which is ranked choice voting, and we'll get to that in a second. But now that you brought that up, not in name, but I think it's worth mentioning that you're starting to see the Donald Trump and Peter Thiel candidates struggle in general election polling and in head-to-head results against Democrats. And this could, I mean, Russell, you've been saying for a long time that you think the nominee is going to be DeSantis for the Republicans in 2024.
They're going to indict Trump.
Well, look, I mean, even if we set aside that concern, Trump's candidates are not performing well as of late. Like Walker is not performing well. I mean, sorry, yeah, Walker is not performing well against Warnock.
Oh, really? The guy with the magic coronavirus steam.
Exactly.
Isn't performing well.
But even like, in Ohio, J.D. Vance.
I'm going to tackle inflation.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, not quite closing the deal there. J.D. Vance struggling to open up against Ryan. Those polls are in a dead heat in Ohio, which has really trended red over the last few cycles. That should be a layup for the GOP in a year like this. An outgoing Republican senator, all they got to do is hold the seat in a state that Trump won by 8 and then I think 10 points in 2020. He's struggling to open up against Ryan. Like I said, those polls are about tied. Blake Masters in Arizona is probably going to lose. And you obviously have Dr. Oz, who's just running, like I said in our stream last week, the springtime for Hitler of Senate campaigns, just like trying to lose there in Pennsylvania. This reflects very badly on Trump, and this takes a lot of clout away from Trump heading into the 2024 primary, where he is going to be facing Ron from Florida. There's no way DeSantis is just going to let him have it. I don't think so. This is his time. He knows it's now or never. You have to seize upon your moment. Just like, lots of Democrats wanted Obama to wait in 2008 so that Hillary can have it. He's like, no, my 2004 DNC speech was a hit. My star is rising now. I got to go now. I think DeSantis thinks the same thing. And so there is going to be a contest there. And if Trump's picks underperform the way they seem to be underperforming now, that's going to really lower his stock price going into the 2024 primary.
I think more than the media is picking up on, Republicans like Trump as a character, maybe even as a figurehead, as somebody who, he's funny to have around. But I don't think they necessarily want him to be the nominee. I think more than is necessarily showing up in polls, they want somebody else. They want someone serious. And that's Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is making all the right moves to win that primary. And given what we saw with the press, look, the press would have reconciled with even Trump. And DeSantis is smart enough to do that pivot when he needs to going into the general election.
All right. So the final thing I want to talk about as it pertains to this result is ranked choice voting, because you had a lot of people on the left celebrating ranked choice voting in this context because it led to the defeat of a far right candidate, Sarah Palin. I've said all along, and I understand the argument for ranked choice voting. I understand that it is a way to empower third-party candidates to rack up enough support to make ballot access easier and things like that. And I think that's hugely important in all seriousness for those who are stumbling upon this show for the first time. As you can probably tell, we're not Democratic Party cheerleaders. I very much think we need at least one new major party to emerge in the next few years, if not several. And I understand that ranked choice voting makes that process easier, which is why on balance, it's probably still a good thing. But I do have to caution leftists who were, singing the praises of ranked choice voting for sinking Sarah Palin. What you saw here was something that people have reported on in mainstream outlets, far and wide. There are many headlines talking about this. And if you think about it for just a minute or two, it makes perfect sense. Ranked choice voting is going to favor moderate candidates. And in this particular race, we saw that happen. You had a fringe right-wing candidate, Sarah Palin. You had a centrist Republican and then a centrist Democrat. And what happened was enough people who voted for the centrist Republican, number one, voted for the centrist Democrat, number two, above the fringe right-wing candidate. That's what put Portola over the top, even though she performed fairly miserably on the first round. Like I said, she underperformed Joe Biden. She got 40% on the first round. She was put over the top because of the sort of moderate consensus that ranked choice voting brings to the forefront, which is why a lot of people who advocate ranked choice voting support it. Like Andrew Yang's Forward Party, I'm sure Andrew Yang would say, well, this is a good thing. Right? Ranked choice voting roots out the quote unquote extremists. Right. This time it screwed over the extremist Republican candidate, but this could just as easily in a blue state fuck over the quote unquote extremist fringe progressive candidate. Don't be surprised if ranked choice voting, if it catches on and spreads, don't be surprised if you see it start fucking over the DSA backed candidates, because it just stands to reason that in a ranked choice voting system, the candidate who gets the most number two choices is a candidate that is favored to win if no one gets a majority on the first round. And a lot of left-wingers who advocate for ranked choice voting do so precisely because it opens up the system to new parties. So if it works according to design, according to plan, then you won't have anybody crossing 50% on the first round because you'll have a lot of competitive third parties. Well, what that's going to mean is that the candidate with the most number two votes is very likely to win. And a candidate who is the most people's second choice is likely to be a moderate, inoffensive, milquetoast status quo candidate. And it was, as you said, I mean, you called this a Jerry Springer type race. That's not far from the truth. It was much nastier between Palin and Begich. God, that name is hard to say. Begich. It was much nastier between those two than it was between Palin and the Democrat. Palin did not attack Mary Portola in this race. She did not run negative ads against the Democrats. She attacked the moderate Republican, the Rhino. That's where she put all of her energy. And, they probably took the Democrat a bit for granted, which is understandable, I guess, because the Democrat only got 40% on the first round. They think, how are you going to go from 40% to beat us? Well, it can because of that moderate consent, because of those moderate Republicans who would rather vote for a moderate Democrat than a Trump Republican. The never Trump Republicans swung this race to the Democrats.
Right,
In a ranked choice system, they are very much empowered to do that. Just as, by the way, but I have to urge leftists who are very excited about this, just as the never Bernie Democrats would have been very empowered to flip it to a moderate Republican if the shoe were on the other foot, if the circumstances were different. This ranked choice voting gives an advantage.
You want Liz Cheney? This is how you get
candidates.
Liz Cheney.
Right. Well, that's a good example. You're right. Absolutely.
If you had a race where it was two Democrats and one of them was a progressive and Liz Cheney, yes, like based on a ranked choice voting scenario, you'd almost be guaranteed to get Liz Cheney.
Right, because if no one crosses 50%,
so many Democrats would have her as their second choice.
Exactly. All of a sudden, these Lincoln Project people are going to be calling the shots. This is a dystopia.
True.
I mean, this is a major reservation I have about ranked choice voting, because this is what it's going to result in. Matthew Ho, friend of the show, who we've interviewed a few times, he tweeted out the other night. Well, what do I mean the other night? Last night. He tweets out that, yeah, ranked choice voting is a way to weed out the divisive candidates. And, you know, Matthew's a great guy. I wish him well. If I lived in North Carolina, I would vote for him. But I would just ask Matthew, well, aren't the Green Party considered divisive by most people? Like,
right,
you're a far left candidate, not far left in my view. You're right in the center of what I would want if I were making the rules. But you're a quote unquote divisive candidate. So why do we want a system that's going to further push to the fringes divisive quote unquote candidates, which is what ranked choice voting is going to do?
A lot of people enjoy hurricanes. That's what the Greens don't get.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, I mean, that's just something that I have to go here. Virtuoso comments.
Ever since that house got picked up in the Wizard of Oz, I've wanted to.
Yeah, there's been a certain mythology to it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Virtuoso says if ranked choice voting was available for presidential elections, both parties are going to cheat their asses off. Well, yeah, you'd see a lot more tactics like what they tried to do to Matthew Ho, which is just get third parties off the ballot altogether. They wouldn't even want to fuck with that, right? Bennett, who's my dad. I'm confused as to why only the second choice votes of the lowest first round vote getter counts in the second round. Yeah, this is a major problem with ranked choice voting too, as I see it. So if you have, let's say, 4 candidates on the race, a Democrat, a Republican, a Green, and a Libertarian, assuming that most Green voters are going to rank Democrat second and most Libertarian voters are going to rank Republican second, it's only the case that the lowest choice have their second place ballots count in the second round. Which means that if you're a Green and you vote Green 1, Democrat 2, because you're afraid of being a spoiler, right? So you vote Green 1, Democrat 2. Wouldn't you then be penalized for your own success if you beat out the Libertarians? Because if the Libertarians finish 4th, those Libertarian votes go to the Republicans.
Right.
So then the fact that the Greens voted Democrat number 2 doesn't really mean anything unless they come in last. So now you're voting for a candidate saying, well, let's hope if they don't win that they come in last so that I don't spoil it for the Democrat. I'm sorry, that doesn't make much sense to me. What makes the most sense to me is vote for the candidate who you want to win. Vote for who you want to win and fuck everybody else. I mean, that's how I would do it. Now, I understand people are worried about spoiling for the, lesser evil, all that stuff. But ranked choice voting, it just seems like the incentives are mixed up in a lot of ways. All right, I'll read your second comment since you want this out there in the world. Ranked choice voting is far better than having to vote for 1 or 2 ranked choices. That's a clever play on words. Without RCV,
now we see where you get it from.
Yeah, now you see where I get it from, right? Without RCV, there is zero chance of a third party gaining traction. I understand that. And I think that's why, on balance, look, if all these third parties are for it, it must be to their advantage to be for it. And ultimately, if you're for third-party politics, I guess you got to trust them. But I'm just saying some of the incentives are fucked here, such as the one you just mentioned. Whereas why is it only the last place candidate whose votes get redistributed on the second round? That creates a disincentive to place third instead of fourth if you're a Green voter who doesn't want to throw it to the GOP.
I didn't even know it worked like that.
Yeah, that's how it works. So only if you come in last. That's why these results were what they are here. I'll throw this up on the screen one more time just so we can all get a look at it now that we've explained this a little more.
Yeah, I thought everyone's votes were redistributed who doesn't end in the first two.
No, because if everyone's votes are redistributed, Russell, then what that would essentially mean is that the highest average ranking wins, unless someone reaches 50 on the first round. If you counted everyone's second choice, then it wouldn't even really matter if you were first or second, as long as no one's above 50. And like I said, if this process works according to the way the Greens and all these third parties want it to work, then no one is going to be over 50 in the first round. And so here you have it one more time. Mary Peltola. I'm sorry, was I calling her Pertola? It's Peltola. See, I never even heard of her until 24 hours ago. Peltola. 40% on the first round, Palin 31% on the first round, Begich 28%. So only Begich's votes got transferred. So here you see in this second graph here, transferred from Begich to Palin, 27,000, transferred from Begich to Peltola, 15,000. Exhausted. An exhausted ballot is like how I would mark my ballot. Whereas you pick who you want to win, leave the rest of it blank. So 11,000 Begich votes did not choose a second vote.
Please clap.